Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Relation Shots, the place to get practical relationship advice that actually works in your relationship. Well, listen, I don't need to tell you that we live in a society that talks a lot about sex, that promotes sex, that sells sex, but I wonder if we really still even have a healthy view of sex. Is sex some feeling-driven, passion-driven thing? Is sex purely physical? Is sexual compatibility something necessary? Does it even exist? There are more questions and more discussions than probably answers when it comes to sex, but most of the conversations around sex tend to stick with the mechanics of sex, the techniques, the positions, the toys, anything that can heighten the physical experience. But is sex just purely physical, or is there something else to it? Those are the questions we want to ask. So in this video, if you desire stronger sexual intimacy in your relationship, I want to address some of what goes into a sexual relationship and specifically talk about 3 types of sex that Dr. Sue Johnson lists as goals or approaches to the sexual relationship, which are not all healthy. But here's the reality. Sex clearly has a relational component to it, as much as we live in a culture that wants to pull the physical act out and pretend like there's no emotion or relational aspects to it. In fact, when couples were surveyed, couples who basically said they were content in their relationship attributed only 15 to 20% of the happiness of their relationship to a pleasing sexual relationship. While on the other hand, dissatisfied, unhappy couples attributed 50 to 70% of their distress on sexual problems in the relationship. So basically what it's saying is content couples see sex as a component of a healthy relationship. Dissatisfied couples majority blame sex for why their relationship isn't good, which makes sense. Because when things start to go poorly in a relationship, usually the sexual relationship is one of the first things that begins to wane or change, which again reminds us that sex is indeed relational. That's why those of you who are like, well, I gotta see if I'm sexually compatible when I'm dating. Listen, dating sexual compatibility does not necessarily translate to married sexual compatibility, because dating has an agenda that marriage doesn't. Performance to win the person over, and marriage has relational dynamics that dating doesn't, like parenting, like sharing finances, like resolving conflict, that clearly impact the success and the happiness of the sexual relationship. So depending on how secure or safe or connected couples feel in a relationship will determine which of the 3 approaches they have in the bedroom. And Sue Johnson calls these goals for sex in the bedroom. You can call them approaches, you can call them types of sex, whatever you want. But we're going to go through all 3. And again, the goal is hopefully that you can recognize where you're at in your relationship right now and begin to move into greater intimacy and health in the sexual relationship in your marriage. And so the first one Sue Johnson identifies as what she calls sealed off sex. The goal of sealed off sex is specifically orgasm, feeling good, and enjoying the moment, and feeling good about your sexual prowess in the bedroom. So this is where you're like, man, I killed that. Yeah, I'm amazing. I smashed that. Good for you. Good for you. So the people who are pursuing sealed off sex usually are the people who want to disconnect the emotionality and the relationship from the physical act. It is purely about sensation and performance for them. That's the goal, nothing else. And the reason is these people normally have not learned to trust in relationship. They remain emotionally aloof. They don't know how to be vulnerable and open up. They'll usually lean away from any action that might invite some level of emotional connection, things like kissing, reciprocal touch, cuddling, non-sexual affection. They'll usually shy away from those things because sex for them has only become about the physical sensation. I just need to relieve the sexual tension in me, and you're my partner, so you're the way I do that. The problem with this is this can often be toxic for a loving, long-term relationship, because unless both are approaching it the same way, one person is going to feel devalued and objectified, like all this other person wants to do is use me for sex. I might as well be a living, breathing blow-up doll for the other person because that is all that they want me for. This person has just not learned how to open themselves up in a relationship. Maybe they don't feel safe in this relationship, or maybe they've just never learned to trust people emotionally and open up that part of themselves. And so for them, the goal is this is just physical interaction. This is physical satisfaction. And I'm not trying to do anything that would open me up to be vulnerable and emotional. These people are often more comfortable with a one-night stand than they are in a healthy, emotionally vulnerable and connected relationship. So that is sealed off sex. The second one is what she calls soulless sex. This is not soulless, this is soulless. Like soulless is safe, you know what, let's just call it safe place sex. This is sex where the goal is reassurance that I'm valued and that I'm cared for. And so sex becomes the means to the end of, I want to alleviate my attachment fears. I'm feeling anxious about the relationship, and when we have sex, I'm like, oh, okay. Everything's good again. They care about me, they desire me, they like me, I'm enough. And so sex becomes the tool to alleviate those anxious fears. Now, there's more emotion involved in this than in sealed off sex, but the problem is the emotion involved is anxiety about the relationship. And I need to have the sex so that my anxiety about the relationship is diminished. I'm reassured everything's going to be fine. It takes care of my abandonment worries. I feel connected again. The problem with this is people that engage in this, it begins to put so much demand and pressure on the act of sex to alleviate the anxiety about the relationship that people can become obsessed about sex. Oftentimes, the people who are having a ton of sex, maybe you hear from a friend or somebody else like, oh man, we have sex every day or twice a day. Not all the time, but most of the time, that is driven by an anxiety of the relationship, not a healthy drive. That is somebody who's like, I need to have sex daily to feel reassured about our relationship and our connection, our bond daily, and so I need to have that daily. So it's not even that the sex is the goal. The sex is the means to the goal of, I want to feel attached again in the relationship. And these couples, it's usually because the basic bonding foundational principles and acts are not happening in the relationship. They don't feel connected. And so the sex almost serves as a band-aid to make one or both of them feel like we're more connected than we really are, so I can feel good about the relationship. Now, men a lot of times get a bad rap for being obsessed about sex or only caring about sex. And I wonder if we had grown up in environments where there was more emotionality, more bonding, more touch. Listen, for a lot of men outside of sex, about the only other place they get any kind of encouraging, supporting sex, or not sex, touch, is in sports, where there's bonding, there's connection, there's high fives, there's slapping, there's hugs, there's the touch that men desire. But outside of sports, not like we're doing it in the boardroom, not like we're just doing it with our friends walking around. You see two women come up and they're going to hug. They're all going to hug each other. They're going to love each other. They're going to care for each other. So I think for a lot of men, it may not simply be high testosterone, got to have sex all the time. Some of them just, this is one of the few ways that they can get the attachment and the connection and the touch that they really desire. And if we learned how to get some of those emotional needs met in other ways, you wonder if the desire for sex may wane a little bit. So that's safe place sex or soulless sex, which the goal is reassurance that I'm desired and valued in the relationship. And the third type is what she calls synchrony sex. And this is where the secure bond, the physical act, and the connection in the relationship all come together at the same time. This is healthy marital sex where everything is firing, where they feel safe with each other, they feel connected to each other, and the sexual relationship is also in a healthy place and has a healthy drive. There are lots of couples that seem to have a regular, quote, healthy sex life, but that sex life is often driven by some of the stuff we've just talked about, which is not a healthy drive, even though the frequency may from the outside look like it's a healthy relationship. So synchrony sex is where the secure bond and the physical intimacy are locked step in step and they go together. This is what we should be seeking. Now, for a lot of couples, depending on the length of your relationship, you may go in and out of all three of these. So the key really is to recognize when you're in maybe one of the goals like sealed off or soulless sex, which does not have a healthy drive, even though our sexuality looks healthy. The drive is not healthy, and we're missing some of the connection we desire in a relationship. And so if we find ourselves in those, the goal is to find out, what are the things that you need for me to feel secure in a relationship? Do you feel safe? If you don't feel safe, what are the things I do that make you not feel safe? Do you feel connected in the relationship and supported and reassured? If you don't, what are the things I do that make you not feel secure? And what are the things I can do that makes you feel secure in the relationship? So we need to be able to have those conversations and ask those questions. When there's synchrony sex, the couple feels comfortable being vulnerable and they're comfortable talking about their sexual relationship because there's no fear of embarrassment or being offended. There is a secure bond, they feel emotionally connected, and so they're able to be more open and vulnerable about their conversations in the sexual relationship. So I want you to evaluate your sexual intimacy currently in your marriage. If you find that you are more leaning towards sealed off sex or soulless sex, the goal will be how can we move towards greater connection and vulnerability and emotional intimacy in a relationship so that we can move to a place of synchrony sex where we're firing on all cylinders. We're connected emotionally, we're connected relationally, but we're also connected physically in the relationship. That becomes the goal of the relationship. So I want you to evaluate. I want you to have a conversation with your spouse. Ask some of the questions I just posed. Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? Do you feel connected? If not, what are the things that are making you not feel that way? And what things do you want from me to feel that way? So we can begin moving towards the healthy, synchronous sex that is what we all desire for greater sexual intimacy in our marriages. So drop a comment. Love to hear your thoughts on these 3 goals or approaches to sex if you've noticed them in your relationship and maybe how you got there and how you can move to a healthier place. If we can help you in any area of your relationship, would love to do that. Check out the links below. You got a free guide to intimacy. Our relationship blueprint course can give you a great foundation for a relationship. Maybe it's our marriage membership to be part of a community where we're strengthening and growing our marriages. So if we can help you in any way, we'd love to do that. And until next time, we'll see you right back here on Relation Shots.